So let's dive into today's topic, which is understanding costly infrastructure problems and just how to fix them. So we have split the agenda into 4 parts, and each of those parts we will be taking a look in detail by switching into the product UI and then with the presentation as well. So the first part of today's agenda is about managing the compute and storage resources, the most important aspects when it comes to monitoring your servers and your virtual servers. Part 2, we will see how important it is to monitor not only the compute and storage resources, but also the processes and the services that are running in your server and just how much load they can contribute to your server. Part 3 will be the hardware problems, the last place that admins look at to diagnose issue is usually the hardware. So it is better to have the hardware monitoring system in place as well. So any problems in the hardware side do not go unnoticed. And finally, we will try to put all of these insights together to understand how you can implement a proactive resource planning strategy to manage your physical as well as your virtual setups. So that is the entire agenda for this webinar. So let's first take a quick look at the key parameters that one has to focus when we're talking about the server infrastructure. Of course, as we spoke, the compute and storage resources, not least of which is the CPU and the memory details of your server, the disk details of your server, and the network connectivity of your server, the status of network adapters, the speed of the network, and parameters like that, the processes, the services, all of those underlying activities that happen on your server, that is an important part to focus as well. And of course, as we saw in the agenda in the previous slide, the hardware components as well. So when we keep a close eye on all of these parameters, we can guarantee that the server performance is optimal, the server is always healthy, and in fact available to process business requests at all times. These are the supported servers within Applications Manager. As you can see, the popular Windows servers, Linux servers, legacy servers such as the AS400 and Solaris servers. So a good mix of all popular servers are supported within Applications Manager. And the virtual servers that we support include the ESX, the Hyper-V, and the Citrix servers, and of course the Docker container as well. So these are the different types of virtual servers that we can monitor with Applications Manager. However, now that we are looking at the first item on our agenda, let me just quickly inform you that in today's example, we will be using the Windows server as well as the ESX and Hyper-V servers occasionally to demonstrate the capabilities of the product. But as I showed in the previous slide, the same capabilities extend to all the supported servers and virtual servers. So we took a look at the key parameters to focus when it comes to server monitoring, right? But it's not just important to have surface level information about the CPU utilization of your server. What we need is to dig deeper into the breakup of CPU utilization. A high level view of the overall health and availability can only do so much when it comes to delivering an optimal performance and to maintain business continuity. But when we dig deeper and find information like this, that is the individual cores within your CPU, the user time, the system time, all the activities that are processed from within the CPU, that is the kind of visibility we need when it comes to solving problems faster and delivering an uninterrupted service to end users. For example, consider user time. So how much of the CPU is used by an operation in a program that is started by the user. So it's basically the amount of time that the processor has spent working on a specific program. Similarly, system CPU time is another important metric which tells us that the processor has worked on the operating system's functions connected to a program that the user has initiated. So similarly, the I/O wait time, the idle time, the CPU utilization for individual processes. So this is the level of granular detail that I'm talking about when we mention visibility into various server parameters. Now this screenshot right here gives us a utilization history detail about our CPU. And as you can see on the left, it is broken down by hour of the day, day of the week, and so on. And these statistics basically tell us how often the CPU utilization is at maximum value, at what time frame within the day the CPU utilization is at peak values, and you can directly correlate them to your business operations and understand that during this phase of the day, the CPU utilization is unusually high. Similar details can also be seen for memory. That is not just the memory utilization of your server, but in fact the breakup of memory utilization, wherein you can see the swap memory utilization, the amount of physical memory utilized, as well as the physical memory that is free. And of course, just like we saw for the CPU utilization, you can actually see a statistical analysis of your memory utilization. So right here, this graph gives us a fair idea into what is the average utilization value, what is the maximum and minimum value, the highest in and the lowest in values, and in fact, what is the standard deviation with respect to these average values when it comes to your memory utilization. So let's talk about disk utilization. So like CPU, like memory, disk utilization is also another very important parameter that we have to consider, in fact, monitor when we're talking about server infrastructure. And right here is a similar breakup of disk utilization, which tells us the amount of free space in each disk and the amount of used space. So this kind of information can help you relocate different resources from one disk to another, install new applications to your disk based upon the size and availability of disk space in your disk. More details in disk include the disk I/O details, where you can see the transfers per second, average queue length, reads, writes per second. So basically the operations that are processed on your disk. And it kind of tells you how occupied your disk is, how loaded your disk is when it comes to processing requests like these. So this is about the disk. Let's take a look at the next key parameter, that is the network details. So when we're talking about network details, what happens quite often is the problem might not necessarily be on the server side. That could be a problem on the network side, and quite often, like hardware, the network details often go unnoticed, and the server teams point fingers at the network teams point fingers at the application teams, and the application teams point fingers again at the server team. So it's like an unending cycle of where the problem is and who's responsible to fix it. But with a single console like Applications Manager, you can do away with all of these blame games and then easily identify where the problem is and how quickly can you troubleshoot and resolve this problem. Let's try to see the same details in a virtual infrastructure. As I said, the ESX server is our example today for the virtual server. You can see on this screen the overview tab of the ESX server reveals similar information about the CPU and memory utilization, the disk and network usage. Right here, you can see the CPU core breakdown, the memory utilization, as well as the various parameters within your memory of the ESX server. Further details include the network and disk I/O details of your ESX server. It tells you how much of the network is utilized, again, the network speed and the packets received and sent via your network. So all of these details are captured within the ESX server. Now let's just quickly take a look at another virtual server, that is the Hyper-V server, which is also part of today's example. Similar information about CPU, about the memory, and the disk partition, as well as the disk I/O details. All of these details present within a single console, that is the Applications Manager console. And further drill down into the Hyper-V server shows us more details that can be put into use to proactively detect and resolve any server or virtual server issues. So what I'm going to do now is log into the product and just walk you through these parameters that we just saw. So right here, I'm within the product, and if you can follow my cursor, under the monitors tab, you can see a view of all the supported technologies within Applications Manager, which spans across application servers, database servers, virtualization, cloud applications, and in fact, a lot of different types of applications. It basically guarantees that the entire application stack within your IT setup is monitored with a single tool. And of course, cloud applications and application performance, we'll see all of those in the coming weeks. But for today, right here, you can see the Windows server listed here. But before I do that, let me just quickly show how to simply add a Windows server. So right here, new monitor, add monitors. Under the servers tab, you will see the Windows monitor. And I'm not going to add a Windows monitor. I'm simply going to show you the screen where the Windows monitor can be added, because I've already added one for today's demonstration. We'll be using that for visualizing the various metrics. So all you have to do is enter your display name here, the host name of your Windows server, the mode of monitoring, the username, the password. If you want to enable event logs for the particular Windows server, you can check this box and the product will start collecting that and display it in the UI. And of course, when you fill in all the necessary fields, clicking on Add Monitor will show you a success message that is, your Windows monitor is successfully added. So now let me just go back to the pre-existing monitor. As you can see here, there are 4 different Windows servers already added. I'm going to take one as an example. And right here, you can see all of the metrics that we spoke about in the presentation in the previous slide. So the overall information about your Windows server, it basically tells us that the health of this particular server is critical. And when you click this icon here, it gives you the root cause of the issues that are happening within your server. So as you can see, it's not just about some surface level metrics, it's about digging deeper into all the necessary parameters that are essential to deliver that optimum performance. So you can see the CPU and memory utilization for the last 6 hours, the breakup of your CPU utilization along with various parameters right over here. Let me switch to the CPU tab, where we can see the CPU details and the CPU breakdown by cores when we scroll further down, and of course a list view of the CPU breakdown by cores as well. So let me take you back to the top and let's navigate to the disk tab, where we will see the disk partitioning and the various size and use percentage of the individual disks within your server. The disk I/O statistics are right here, and some more parameters about the operations processed on your disk. Right here is the network tab, which gives us the network interface as well as the network adapter details. The input traffic, output traffic, as well as the speed are some important metrics to keep track of when we're talking about the network interface. And of course, errors tab here will list out any possible network errors that occur and might contribute to problems in your server performance. We'll take a look at the other tabs once we have visited them in the presentation. But for now, let me take you back to the monitors tab. and show you similar details for the VMware ESX server. Now, addition of VMware ESX server is the same as the Windows server. Now, all of your applications or servers can in fact be added individually from here, like I showed, or you can configure an automated network discovery to discover all the servers in your network and have them added within your product UI. For example, for this VMware virtual server, you can run the vCenter discovery to discover all the virtual servers in your network and have them added within the product. So a quick overview of some of the metrics in the ESX server: the CPU, the memory, the disk and network, as well as all the virtual machines that are used, that are in fact running on this particular instance, along with their details right over here. So let's walk through some other tabs that we've seen in the presentation: the CPU utilization breakdown by core, the memory utilization of your ESX instance, the data store details, and of course the network details that we were talking about in the Windows server as well, the disk I/O details of the ESX server. So as you can see, these capabilities extend even to virtual servers and not just physical servers that we are talking about, which is why we wanted to present this webinar as a server and virtual server infrastructure monitoring webinar. So moving back to the presentation, so we can resume where we left off. So we've seen these metrics, right? What we're going to see next is the second item on our agenda today. And this is about keeping a tab on the critical business processes and services that might be running on your Windows server. So this screenshot here are just some representative examples of how they look like in the UI. But of course, we will take a look at them in real time when we switch to the product. When we talk about process details, the metrics that are captured include the instances that have this particular process configured, the CPU and memory usage of each of these individual processes will be captured. It's basically understanding the load that the processes are contributing on your server. This is an example of the process split up in a Linux server. So this is how it looks. That is the commands and arguments within that process and the CPU and memory utilization of each of those processes individually. And of course, if you have several different servers in your infrastructure, and of course, which is usually the case, and if you have a set of critical processes and critical services that you want to monitor, you can make use of the process template and apply similar templates to all servers. So all of the processes that you have configured in this template will be monitored in all the servers where the template is applied. The service details captured within the product include the ability to manage and unmanaged services. So it basically eliminates the task of going through your Windows Task Manager to configure these services if you're talking about a Windows server. But of course, you can do all of that from within the product UI, that is, start a particular service, or in fact, stop a particular service, add new services, or delete services. And of course, just like process templates, you can apply service templates to monitor all the critical services in all of the servers within your network infrastructure. But beyond processes, beyond services, we can also capture event logs of your server. So this example here is that of the Windows event log. And as I showed you during the Add Monitor screen, we had an option to check a checkbox that said Enable Event Log Monitoring. Once we have done that, the event logs will be captured within the product. But of course, before we do that, we will have to configure some event log rules based on which these logs will be populated within the product UI. And if you have a certain specific event that you want to capture within the UI, you can also do that by creating and applying your own custom event log rules. And when we're talking about processes, services, and event logs, these are not just limited again to servers. These can also be configured for virtual machines, provided you have enabled the guest OS for virtual machines so as to make sure these processes and services and event logs are captured for virtual machines as well. Now, one additional thing that is exclusive to Windows servers and only when you add them through WMI mode and not through SNMP mode is the scheduled task, that is capturing the various scheduled tasks in your Windows server and details like when is the next scheduled task supposed to run and when did it run previously, what are the scheduled tasks that have been missed. So that kind of detail can also be captured with the scheduled task tab in your Windows server. So again, switching back to the product, and we are inside the ESX server. Let me go back to the Windows server right here. This is the one we've been using for today's demonstration. So if you see on the right-hand side of my screen, and if you're following my cursor, you will see the option to add process monitoring. So when I click on this, what happens is this dialog box lists all the processes that are running currently in your server. And what I'm supposed to do if I want to monitor these processes is select the processes that I want to monitor with Applications Manager and click on Add Process. So if you see here, the entire list of processes that are running are captured, are in fact displayed here. So I'm not going to click on Add Process because I've already done that, but this is how you configure processes. Similarly, right here is the Add Service Monitoring, which lists out all the services that are running within your Windows server in this example. So a whole list of services over here, and I can select the services that are important to me, that are very critical to the nature of my business operation, and I can add them here. So I'll close this window, and right here in the Overview tab, when I scroll to the very bottom, I'll see the process and service details of various processes and services that I've configured. And you can see the options to restart, start, stop, manage, unmanage, all of these functions within the service module. And right here, you can see similar operations for the process details as well. And if you notice, again, each parameter, you will see a configure alarms icon right here, for all different parameters, basically. So what it ensures is you can configure alarms even for individual parameters based upon the importance of those parameters and the importance of business operation that your particular server instance is working on. So you can immediately get notified, have them associated to some actions, and in fact fasten your troubleshooting time when it comes to a lot of performance issues. But of course, we will take a look at those as well after a few slides. So this is about adding the process. This is about adding services. Right here, you can see the scheduled tasks that have been added. And as you can see here, the Add Scheduled Task icon is also here that lists out all the tasks scheduled to run on your Windows server. Same as service and process monitoring. So I'm going to close this, and I'm going to go back to the ESX server so I can demonstrate these capabilities there as well. So right here, you can see the event log details, but they have not been configured. If you click here, you can configure the event logs for your ESX server over here. So all of the various events are present here, and all you have to do is select them and add them. So of course, if you notice similar details across servers, across virtual servers, but we did talk about process and service templates, right? So let me just walk you through that as well. Right here, under the Admin tab, on the left-hand side, under the Discovery and Data Collection title, you will see the Templates library, which is where the service and process templates are housed. So you can add a new template. I'm just going to open the pre-existing template. So this is the exact same screen that you'll be presented with when you try to add a new process template. You can associate various server processes. You can remove them. Basically, this is where you configure the processes that you want to monitor across all servers, and then you proceed with applying this template to various different servers. So you can either apply it to monitor types, that is, when I select the monitor types, it gets applied to all Windows monitors within my server because that's what I've selected here. If I want the template to be applied to a specific Windows server, I'm going to select this option here and then choose the Windows instance for which I want to apply this template. Or if I select this one, this is basically a logical grouping of a lot of different applications and servers, and then I can apply it across those groups as well. The service templates work exactly the same way as the process templates. This is the configuration window. And of course, we have tooltips within the product at all places. So they again help the users navigate and make it simpler to understand the product and configure a lot of functions within the UI. So back to the presentation right here. So let's talk about the hardware problems now. Now this is a brief section where we'll talk about the necessary parameters that have to be tracked so as to understand if there is a problem on the hardware side, and if there is a problem, how does that problem contribute towards server downtime and in fact subsequently resulting in business downtime. So we support the Dell and HP machines when it comes to hardware monitoring, provided the Open Managed Server Administrator is installed on your Dell machines and the HP System Insight Manager is installed on your HP machine. And this screenshot basically tells us the type of hardware metrics that we capture within the product. But this slide should present a better picture as to how the data looks like once the data is collected. So the array details, the disk details, processor details, the memory details, the fan speed. So that is the kind of details we capture when it comes to hardware. So again, a quick switch to the product, a Windows server. So we've seen the CPU, disk, network, and event log details. So, and even the scheduled task details. So let's take a look at the hardware details. So right here you can see the fan, the health of the fan, the temperature of your CPU, the processor, and the memory details. And as I said, these individual hardware parameters are also configurable. That is, you can create thresholds and associate them with alarms. So you get notified even if the problem is on the hardware side. So that's how you basically get notified. If the problem is on the network side, through alarms configured for the network tab, the problem in the disk, the CPU, basically where the problem is and what the problem is can be known with simple fault management module of Applications Manager, and which is exactly what we are going to talk about in the next part, that is the last part of this webinar. So when we talk about resource planning to manage physical and virtual setups, the first thing that it involves is fault management. So that is what I've been talking about in the previous slide, configuring alarms based upon thresholds and associating them to remedial actions, which will help solve these recurring issues, the known issues that we have when it comes to server and virtual server issues. And this automated action can help save incredible amounts of troubleshooting time and help prevent loss of service by automated resource planning. One fine example of this could be, imagine if you want your Amazon EC2 instance to immediately start in case your Tomcat server fails. You can configure an automated action like that. So once the Tomcat server violates its threshold and becomes problematic, your EC2 instance is immediately triggered to start, and this basically prevents any loss of business service and your end users are not impacted because of these internal issues that you might have. And ultimately, that is the goal of all organizations, to deliver uninterrupted business service to their end users. And of course, any monitoring strategy is incomplete without any analytical information, and that is also captured within the product, wherein we use certain machine learning algorithms to predict the future growth and utilization trends of your servers that help you in planning capacity based upon the load handled by your server, the CPU load, the memory load handled by your server, and whether or not you need to upgrade your capacity or reallocate your resources. So that is what we're going to see in this part. Let's begin by taking a look at threshold configurations. Now, as I mentioned, these thresholds are configurable right down to the attribute level. That is, in this example, if you see, I have tried to configure the threshold for the CPU utilization right here, and this is the value that I've entered for this. Now what happens, what I can do in fact in this case is associate this threshold to a Windows service action that the product provides. So what happens is, let us say if the CPU utilization value breaches the threshold, I want my Windows server instance to restart. So those are the kind of actions that we enable, that is start the services or stop services or restart services, or in fact restart your Windows Server instance or stop your Windows Server instance.
Let's take a look at some other actions that we have beyond the Windows Service action. So the virtual machine actions also include the starting your virtual machine or stopping your virtual machine or even restarting your virtual machine, may it be your Hyper-V, your VMware, or your Xen servers. So that is the kind of actions that are also applicable to virtual machines. And another important action is the execute script action. And this action basically helps you to execute custom scripts that you might have that have to run upon a certain threshold breach. Now, in this example, let us say the disk space. Now, quite often you might get an alert by your Windows OS that will tell you that the disk space is running low. And in this case, imagine if you have a script that automatically triggers the disk cleanup. So you can have that script executed automatically each time the disk space low alert is raised within the product. So what happens is, without any manual intervention, your disk space is cleaned up because you have an automated action configured here. But beyond this, there are a lot more actions within the product, as you can see from this screen. That is starting, stopping the virtual machines, the Java thread and heap dump generation, garbage collection. These are really valuable actions because within the UI, with a click of a single button, you can trigger garbage collection, you can generate heap dumps, you can generate thread dumps, and avoid sifting through log files to identify the slow threads or block threads and things like that. So let me show you some analytical information. This is the capacity planning report that I mentioned previously. As you can see here, both the instances of Windows that are here, they are oversized. That is, the CPU utilization and the disk utilization metrics have crossed the threshold levels and are at an alarming rate. So this basically tells us that it is time to upgrade our capacity and add more Windows Server instances to process requests. Similar information is also available for virtual servers, and this basically tells us that there is in fact nothing to worry about because all instances are safe and sound, in fact undersized, and can be used to process a lot of business requests. And a quick look at the forecast reports, that is knowing how the performance has been historically for your servers and using that information to accurately predict how likely the growth and utilization trends will be in the future. So if you see this section here, this basically tells us that in a month's time, the instances of these two servers are actually going to cross the ideal level and into the red zone, and which is in fact cause for concern. And so you know before time what the scenario is going to look like a few months down the lane, and proactively plan your resource strategy like that. So let us just go back to the product for one last time to see what we have seen so far. And right now we are inside the Windows monitor again. So if you see this option on the right, you can see the configure alarms action. But when I click this, you will see a screen like this where I can configure the thresholds and associate them to actions for health, for availability. And I'm clicking on the threshold icon here, and I can see the various attributes that I can configure the thresholds for. But better yet, what I can do is in fact click on the threshold profile here, view all pre-existing threshold profiles, and associate any of the pre-configured threshold profiles to a particular attribute of my server. Or if there isn't any pre-configured threshold profile that is applicable to the values that I need, what I can do in fact is create a new threshold profile with the specific values that I want, the messages, the kind of alarms that I want to raise. That is, if I want a critical alarm to raise, what should be the value for which the alarm should be marked critical, for what values it should be warning, and for what values it is all safe and there is no problem to worry about. So this is how you configure thresholds, and this is where you apply the thresholds to. If you see here, it says these thresholds are used by no applications, but you can click here and associate them to different servers and different attributes. So let me just quickly show you the alarms tab. Again, you can configure alarms for individual servers. Right here, I've taken today's example, the Windows server. All of these thresholds are right here, just as we saw from within the server. And again, you can associate thresholds to different attributes. You can associate thresholds to a type of server. That is, when I select the monitor type, these thresholds get applied to all the Windows 2012 monitors, that is servers within my UI. Right here is the actions tab where I can view all pre-configured actions. That is, the email actions that have been configured are displayed here. If you have other actions configured, they will also be listed here. I can click on add new, create more actions like the SMS action. You can integrate your own custom SMS gateway for this. Execute program, like I said, run your own script. Send trap, configure SNMP traps to send notifications. Java heap dump and thread dump generation, a very valuable action that helps save a lot of time when troubleshooting Java applications. Amazon EC2 instance action, Windows service actions, start, stop, restart, or in fact, add the services that you want to restart based upon different monitors. So that's about the default management part. Let me just quickly show you the reports part before we wind up the presentation and move to the Q&A section. So over 100 plus reports are built in within the product, and you can access all of them from here. Let me just show the servers tab because we're talking about servers. The at a glance report reveals an overall summarized view of all the servers in your network based upon various parameters like the ones you see in your screen. The trend analysis report is what we saw right at the beginning. That is the statistical analysis, the hour of the day, the week, the day of the week, those kind of details are captured here. So as you scroll down, you see the minimum and maximum values that we saw in the presentation. The day of the week will present similar information except for a different time frame. The statistical report that gives us the standard deviation and the lowest and highest 10 values of the utilization of our Windows, that is the CPU utilization. Of course, you can see these reports for numerous different metrics within your server. The capacity planning report It's the one we saw towards the end of the presentation right here. If you see that this instance that we've used for today's demonstration, it's clearly undersized because the memory utilization has exceeded to abnormal levels. And if you compare it with the other two instances, it paints a clear picture that this load, that is the load handled by this server, can be redistributed to any of these two instances because they clearly possess the CPU and memory space to accommodate more requests as against to this instance right here. And finally, the forecast report, which will again paint a graph like this for us, the way we visualized in the presentation. So right here, you can toggle machine learning on or off. This is 1 month's predictive analysis. You can see similar analysis for 3 months, for 8 months, and up to some 2 years. And of course, you can enter your own custom range as well. So this basically allows you to even plan your budget based upon the future trends, how the trends are going to look like in the future, whether you have the capacity to accommodate these requests, handle these business operations when the values go beyond expected levels. So proactive resource planning is enabled with the help of all of these features put together. So I'm going to go back to the presentation again and walk you through a quick recap of what we have seen in this presentation so far. We began with the managing compute and storage resources in our server and virtual server infrastructure, that is the CPU, the disk, the memory metrics, the processes and services, and just how important it is to keep track on those as well. The hardware problems that can sometimes contribute to server downtimes. And we also took a look at some analytical information and a little bit of the fault management module. So all of these resources will be shared with you after the webinar is over, the video recording of the webinar and the presentation as well. And we will also be sharing all of the questions discussed through the course of this webinar, also the questions that we'll be discussing now in the next few minutes. So basically all resources will be shared. And if you have, if there are more webinars that we're going to conduct, as we saw in the schedule right at the start. If you have any doubts, any queries, remember to send it to eval-apm@manageengine.com, and our technicians will always be available to assist you.